Hello and welcome to TalkFCB and welcome back here to the channel, guys. And with the end of the decade approaching now, as we're very, very close to 2020, I thought it would be a great idea, and maybe quite a fun one, to look at every single Barcelona signing since 2010. Today, we're going to be looking into 10 transfer winners in total, 45 players signed in that time, and ranking them. Where do we feel that Barcelona have bought well, and where have we bought absolutely atrociously? And to be honest, some of these are just downright confusing. We're going to be discussing it all, the last decade of Barca signings, in which time we have spent 1.1 billion. Incredible money, incredible players, and some dreadful ones too. It's all coming up. Let's get right into it. And just before we do start, guys, I've got to point out, I'm going to be ranking each of these signings on absolutely everything. Not just there about the performances, that of course is going to be a major factor in how I rank them, but it's also going to take into account the transfer fee, the amount of money there we had to pay to bring them on board, and also, of course, the amount that maybe we ended up selling them for. That could play a part too. It's going to be everything all into one, and here are the tiers that we're going to be ranking them into. Number one, the very top mark there, the top tier, is going to be great signing. Somebody who was brought in, had a brilliant impact, was a good transfer fee, they will end up in great signing. Then there's good signing, somebody who came in and did well, maybe not as well as those above them, but a good signing nonetheless. And also then, I've got a really important column there, unfulfilled potential. That there is really going to fill up, because many of our signings over the years, I feel, have not quite realised that full potential at the club. Then we've got poor signing, somebody who didn't do well, or was bought for too much, or without any reason to get them, and then terrible signing. Somebody who came in, was a bad player, was poor for the club, didn't add anything, and was maybe too expensive. And then finally, guys, when I was doing these tiers, I was thinking, with Barca, you need a confusing column. You need a column there that basically says, what is all this about? What did this transfer mean? How did it happen? Because at times, some of these, they don't really make any sense. But okay, if we do kick off here with the 2010 summer transfer window, and here we have our first 4 players. In unfulfilled potential, I'm going to put there Ibrahim Afellay. We bought him in there for 3 million euros. He looked like he was going to be the next big thing, a young talent there emerging in the game. He had some brilliant moments on the field. Of course, you remember his assist in the Champions League for Lionel Messi's goal against Real Madrid. But obviously, those injuries, that cost him his Barcelona career. We never saw the Afellay that we should have done. That's why he goes in unfulfilled. In good signing, I've gone for Adriano there. Maybe towards the end of his signing, he would have gone down the list, no doubt about that. But for his full time at Barcelona, I think actually there, he was a good player to have. Certainly somebody around the squad that was very versatile. He scored some brilliant goals as well. Some absolute screamers in there for Adriano. That's why he goes in good for me. And then great signing. They speak for themselves. Javier Mascherano, David Villa. Mascherano brought in for 20 million euros. David Villa there for 40. Both of them excellent signings. Villa would have gone on to be one of the all-time Barca greats, I feel, if it wasn't for that terrible, terrible injury. But even so, he was still a massive part there in that Champions League success. And Mascherano, a legend, so many games for the club, so many really, really impressive displays, and always, he gave his all. That's how we start. And then we do move on to the summer of 2011 when Barcelona only brought in 2 players. Those 2 were Cesc Fabregas and Alexis Sanchez. 2 very household names there in the footballing world. And I've got to say, I have to put Cesc in unfulfilled potential because there was so much excitement when we brought him back. We paid big, big money there. It was around 35 million euros to bring him back, which in those days was an awful lot of money. Got him back from Arsenal, and it never really happened. He was such a talented player. He went on, of course, he bossed the Premier League for Arsenal. He even went back there with Chelsea and put in some brilliant displays, won the league again. But at Barca, it didn't really happen. He never really waited around there and got his place in midfield. He couldn't dislodge, of course, Xavi or Iniesta, and that's the reason there why I've got to put him in unfulfilled. Then there's Alexis Sanchez. For me, a good signing, somebody we brought in there, 26 million euros. We then sold him on for a decent fee as well, went on to be absolutely brilliant in the Premier League for Arsenal. But for Barca, it didn't happen maybe as much as you'd like to. In the big games, maybe Alexis didn't do quite enough on enough occasions. But for me, a good signing overall, and that there is 2011 done. There was another 2 signings to come in the summer of 2012, and these 2 signings come at completely different ends of the spectrum. We do have our very first terrible signing of the decade. It's Alex Song. And I think, to be honest, guys, you'll back me on that. I don't really like slating somebody and saying, you were terrible, you were so bad that you're in that column. But Alex Song, it was not good. He was brought in there for nearly 20 million euros. He was expected to provide competition for Sergio Busquets in that role, but it never happened. He played many games actually at centre-back when we were really, really desperate. That didn't exactly go well. And probably Alex Song's highlight at Barcelona was actually there becoming a bit of a meme when he tried to grab the trophy from Eric Abidal when he thought that it was meant for him, but of course it actually wasn't. But Jordi Alba does get there onto the top of the list. Great signing, brought him back in there from Valencia, just 14 million euros. Really astute, really good signing, and of course he's gone on to be a really, really impressive Barca player. He's got to be up there. Another 2 signings came in 2013, and we do have our first confusing signing of the decade. That there goes to Bojan Krkic. Now I know you're all thinking, Bojan was signed and Bojan came through the system way before the decade began, but no, we actually in 2013 signed him back. We actually there activated a sort of clause to bring him back from Roma for 13 million euros. And nobody knows why. Nobody really understands why Barcelona activated that option, paid the money, brought him back, and then he just went out on loan, until eventually we pretty much let him go for absolutely nothing. So that one there has to be our first confusing signing. And then, of course, great signing, Neymar Jr. We all know about the way that he left, but we all know, of course, a massive part of MSN, the Champions League win, a treble-winning campaign. Neymar has to go in great signing. And now we move on to the crazy summer of 2014. This was, of course, the time where Barcelona knew they were going to get a transfer ban, and because of that, they went wild in the transfer market. And I've got to say, we bought some brilliant players in this market. We really, really did. We'll start with the great ones. Up the top there, Luis Suarez speaks for itself alongside Neymar there. He has to go down as a great Barcelona signing, bringing him in there from Liverpool. He had to wait for his debut, of course, but he has been brilliant. Then Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. It's incredible to think we signed Ter Stegen from Borussia Mönchengladbach for just 12 million euros. What a signing, what a goalkeeper. And Rakitic are going to be there too. Of course, right now he's got his critics, but over the course of his Barcelona career, he himself was brought in for just 18 million. That's a bargain. You could sell him now for even more than that. And of course, Champions League winner, scoring in the final, he's got to be there on the top row. We then move down to the good signings in 2014. That there goes to Claudio Bravo and Jeremy Mathieu. Bravo, I thought, when he was at the club, was absolutely brilliant. He pushed Ter Stegen on. He really got the best out of him. He was also very consistent as well when he was the number 1 keeper for the time that he was at Barca. And also Mathieu. A lot of people, of course, criticised him at the end of his time at Barcelona. I can completely understand that. But during the treble-winning season, he actually had some good games. Scored some very important goals. Think about that goal there in El Clasico against Real, and also the goal the week after that against Celta Vigo. A vital one there as he went on to win the league. For me, Mathieu there would go in just about as a good signing. Then, unfulfilled goes to Thomas Er Marlin, who I actually say I did like as a Barcelona player. I did like him as a centre-back, but it was a question, like Afellay really, get him on the field. He spent far too much of his time out injured. That was a real shame, and for that reason, he has to go there in unfulfilled. And it actually gets even worse, of course. I think you're all expecting this. This one could have gone in confusing because obviously the deal doesn't make sense. But at the same time, when you look at Douglas out on the field, you look at when he was brought in there, and he was brought in 4 million euros. He was dreadful, terrible. He has to be in that column. It was one of the worst signings of the decade. 2 players then were technically brought in 2015-16 season, but obviously they did have to wait to make their Barcelona debut because of that transfer ban. And I don't really think that it's a coincidence that both of these players do lie in the bottom columns because they were sort of brought in. We sort of rushed in to make a decision there to bring somebody in when we had that ban. Neither of them then went on to work out. And it was a shame because obviously they did come with the ambition to play. They waited there for their debut, but Alex Vidal had that very, very unfortunate injury when he was starting to break into that team, but overall I would say his time at Barcelona would have to go down at an 18 million euro signing as a poor signing. And then Arda Turan simply there for the transfer fee. It was 34 million euros up front and even more to follow in variables. He would have to go down for the way that he played, the way that of course he's still on our books. We couldn't sell him, we couldn't get anything back, big wages as well. That one has to go down there as a lot of money forked out for what turned out to be a terrible signing. Barcelona once again were busy in 2016 after that ban there was lifted. We went out into the market and signed a number of young and exciting players, but unfortunately for me, this was a transfer window of severely unfulfilled potential. You start there, Paco Alcácer, Lucas Digne, Denis Suarez, each of those three players I would say unfulfilled potential. Paco never really got a full chance, Lucas Digne exactly the same there, and Denis Suarez probably would go in maybe just about poor signing, but at the end of the day, we only signed him back there for €3 million. So we didn't exactly waste a lot of money there in bringing Denis back to the club, but there were some brilliant signings. You got Samuel Umtiti there in a great signing, that speaks for itself, brought him in there for just €25 million. Even now with his injury problems, you could sell him for so much more than that. And good signing as well, Jasper Cillessen. Of course, he didn't become the number one. He left this summer, of course, for a big transfer fee as well. But during his time at the club, he was excellent. A brilliant goalkeeper. He would have to go down there as a good signing. But Andre Gomez, he would be in poor for me. It was a big transfer fee, €35 million plus 25 million in variables as well to Valencia, and it never worked out. It's a shame right now to see him with that bad injury that he's received at Everton, but I am hoping that when he comes back, he can really start to realise some of that enormous talent, because he does have it. He is a good player. There is a good player in there somewhere, but it just wasn't meant to be at Barcelona. And after the Neymar money hit in 2017, Barcelona, of course, spent big in that transfer window. And we have to start with some more confusing signings, because that's what Barca is all about. And certainly here, we start with Marlon, brought in there from Brazil. One of these strange Brazilian transfers. €5 million we signed him for, never really got a chance, and he was sold off there with a buyback clause near enough straight away. And again, didn't really make any sense to me. Then you've got Paulino. This one was such a hard one to rank, because when he was brought in, we all hated it. We all absolutely didn't understand the signing. I still don't really understand it. He had some good moments, scored some good goals, but overall never really fitted the Barcelona style of play that we want. But at the same time, we brought him in for massive money, 40 million, but we managed to sell him for actually just a bit more. Very, very weird, very confusing there from Barcelona. And finally, Mena, brought in there, again, not a player that really suited the philosophy, the style, the real stature there of Barcelona. Somebody who quite clearly, straight away, will look much more suited to the Premier League there. Big, strong, good in the air, good defensive qualities, but not really a Barcelona player. But again, you can't really put him in bad signing, because we brought him in for just €11 million and we sold him on there for so much more when we sold him to Everton. So there, very confusing again. For me, Gerard Deulofeu's return to the club has to go down there as a poor signing. We brought him back from Everton for €12 million, but it never really worked out, never really happened for him, and eventually we did manage to take a loss when we sold him on there eventually to Watford. And there was also there two colossal signings. One in the summer with Ousmane Dembele, one in January for Philippe Coutinho. Combined there, over €250 million for the pair, and both of them, you've got to put them right now in unfulfilled potential. Coutinho is out on loan, didn't happen for him last season, never really found a specific role at Barcelona, a position that he felt comfortable with. And Dembele, we haven't seen him enough. Injury problems like many of the players on that list there, on that row, they are unfulfilled for a reason. He needs to get on the pitch, he needs to show that talent, because for the money we spent, we haven't seen enough from him. There was, though, one good transfer to come out of that summer. It does there go to Nelson Semedo, who he brought in from Benfica for €35 million, and just about there he does go into good, but I still feel as though there's more to come, more to see that we have to see from Semedo. And now we do move on to the summer of 2018, where I've got to say some very, very good signings were made from Barcelona. Clement Longley has to go in, great signing, brought him in from Sevilla for €35 million, and he has been outstanding since he's come in. And again, a player there that no doubt right now you could probably sell him for more than that, and he's going to go on there, I'm sure, and stay in Barcelona's team for quite a long time yet, potentially alongside the man next to him there, Samuel Umtiti. Mello has got to go in there as well, just over €30 million we signed him for, and that was a great deal too, so much more as well to come from him. And I put Arturo Vidal there in good signing, somebody there experienced, wasn't exactly expensive at just under €20 million, but 18 million we paid for Vidal, and that for me was a decent deal for us. It wasn't all rosy though in 2018, was it? Because we do have another terrible signing to add to the list, and that has to be, there's no question about it, Kevin Prince Boateng. That was indeed very confusing, but like with Douglas, when he was out there on the field, he just looked nowhere near a Barcelona player. Terrible signing, very, very bad time that he had. And then you move on again to some confusing ones. Malcolm Murillo. Now, Malcolm was brought in for a pretty big transfer fee there, 41 million, and much like Paulino, Brazilian brought in, never really had a chance in the team, Malcolm, never really trusted by Valverde. Then at the end of the season, we pretty much sell him for just over the amount. Very, very strange indeed. Then there's Murillo. I can understand why we brought him in. We wanted some cover at centre-back, but when he came in, hardly ever played, and for that reason, I couldn't put him in poor, couldn't put him in terrible, because he is a player who's of a decent quality, but it has to go there. Confusing again. And also Todibo there for me would have to go down as a good signing. Brought him in just as he was getting to the end of his contract there with Toulouse. Just €1 million he paid there for Todibo, and that there looks like an exciting young centre-back that I hope will remain at the club. But on that, we don't know yet. Finally, guys, we do now move on to the final transfer window of the decade in 2019. We start again with some confusing ones. Emerson brought in there as a sort of joint deal between Barcelona and Real Betis. Very, very interesting situation there. We both seem to have paid some of the transfer fee. Right now he's at Betis. He came out early this week and said that one day he believed that he'll end up at Barcelona. We'll have to watch this space. Then there's Marc Cucurella. That transfer was extremely confusing. He was on loan at Eibar. Suddenly then, we activated our clause to get him back, but then we sent him out on loan to Getafe with some sort of deal in there to maybe get him back again one day. Very confusing, very, very weird situation there with Marc Cucurella. And then for me, Neto right now has to go in unfulfilled potential. The reason, of course, for that is the fact that we've hardly seen the guy during his Barcelona career so far. We should get to see a bit more of him as time goes on. Junior Firpo, just about right now, goes in good signing, but of course, very early days, plenty more to see from him. And then we do move on to the top row. The final two signings that we're going to discuss, it's Frenkie de Jong and Antoine Griezmann, which for me have got to go in great. Frenkie, exciting, young, fantastic in the midfield. Then there's Antoine Griezmann, finding his feet now, can score big goals for this club, combining with Messi, combining with Suarez. It looks very, very exciting indeed, and finishing there. Really strong. And so that there, guys, concludes every single Barcelona transfer of the current decade. And I think what we can take from this is three things. Barcelona, number one, have signed a number of very, very good players. A lot of them at very good prices too. Barca have also signed a lot of players, though, who we brought in for quite big money, and they've never really realised that potential. And number three, Barcelona do a lot of very strange business. We are a very, very unique club. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. What did you make of these rankings? What would you change? What do you agree with? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. There's plenty to discuss. I will see you soon. Thanks as always for your incredible support. And until next time, as always, Visca El Barça.